Fireside chat with the Philippe Courtot, the chairman and CEO at Qualys. And theme for this fireside chat is the cybersecurity technology entrepreneurship. I request Mr. Vinayak Godse, Vice President DSCI, to begin this fireside chat. And over to you, sir.
Okay, thanks Vivek, and good to have those presentations, Sumit, and probably understand the paradigm shift which is happening in terms of the basic security technologies moving. Although we'll talk probably a little less on technology, we'll talk more on how this entrepreneurship journey of Qualys has evolved. Okay. And because we are quite encouraged to see
early adopters. Apple Computer was an early adopter in 2001. At the time when we were coming up with our scanner, and which was really a little bit rinky-dinky. It was, you could run a scan and you didn't know whether it was going to finish or not. And so I asked the guy at Apple Computer at the time, which was in charge of providing the security of their entire network. So, and they selected us. And the guy told me, I said, why did you select us? So, Donnelly, that's the name of the guy. And he asked, look, Philippe, it's very simple. Yes, I know that your technology is not really at the level, but today I've got two engineers scanning my perimeter to try to identify the vulnerabilities that we have. I cannot keep these guys more than a year because it's pretty boring, and you guys have automated that. So I know you're not quite perfect yet, but I think that you will at some point in time, get all that fixed. And so now I can use these two people to do significantly better job and then keep them. And that was the core success of Qualys, is on one hand our determination to the architecture, we're very architecture-centric, and the second one is teaming up with all these early adopters. Our customers, they know, in fact, most of the time more than we do. That's a big change. It's not anymore the old IBM day, or IBM at the priest of technology, as I call them, bringing the technology to the masses. Today, I mean, the customers they have the use case, and I learned that very early in my career, because when I was at CCML, I realized that our customers knew more about mail, and the way they were using mail was so very innovative. So having that connection with the customer is really key. And that determination and that to the architecture.
So the journey in terms of the market, like it was primarily US in the early days, and when did you started?
No, we went global immediately. Okay. Immediately. Okay. The reason is because what is interesting, we started our successful with the large companies, which at the time, being a SaaS company selling to large company, was a little bit unusual. The reason was scalability. One of our first large customers was DuPont. And so DuPont there was the 13 or 12 critical sectors I forgot, because they were manufacturing paint. Yeah. They were now considered by the American government as a company that needed to really pay attention to security, because paint could be used for terrorism activity, the products. So they issued a big tender, and at the time, they had all these different factories all over the world. So they had 40 locations. So they selected us. Same story over again. They say, why did you select us? And they said, oh, but by the way, it's very simple. You are the only one who could do the job. Because we could put these scanners, ship them 2 days later, they were arriving. Any monkey like me could install them in 5 minutes. Then they were essentially remotely managed and self-updating. So we could add the scale. So we start the market from the very top. That's why today we have 74% of the Fortune 100 which have standardized on Qualys, and about 50% of the Fortune 500 which have deployed Qualys globally. So scale, and that's, of course, it was our architecture again, which was giving us that scale.
Yeah. And the current market, if I may ask, like, it's primarily percentage-wise distribution. You can give your exact number, but which is a bigger market? Yeah.
Oh no, today the US is still the bigger market because they have the biggest network, fundamentally. Yeah. So today it's about 70% of our revenues are from the US, about 25% from Europe, and 5% from Asia Pac. But for us, it's starting to change, because what is happening today because although the network are smaller, we're now selling significantly more solutions, so we can see very good growth in Europe and in Asia Pac as well. And but definitively, I mean, today America that's the strength of America. There are the two elements of strength of America are very simple. One, they have a huge cohesive or homogeneous market, and second, they have a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why today technology was starting in the US. But I think it's really changing, because today the internet has brought that capability for so many people today now to access technology, and then they could access markets as well. So the internet is changing the game, and from a geopolitical standpoint, if you look at today the fight between America and China, it's all about suddenly America has waken up, and they say, wait a minute, you know, look at Huawei, look at these guys. The battle is 5G. Who is going to wire the planet is going to be is 5G, which is coming pretty fast. And that's another game changer for the internet, because everything becomes now instantly available, everything will become connected.
Yeah.
So that you see that big geopolitical fight.
So a little bit on geopolitical side. So the story of larger technology market driven by this data and platformization and analytics. You will say that China is one story, right? Which is more state intervention driven kind of story where data economy is led by the publicly funded kind of organization, and those organizations are now going to global scale. Whereas in US, it's more private-led innovation, most of the organizations. So more data economies, they're more privately led kind of thing. And Europe with GDPR and kind of thing, they have been trying to decentralize the data economy. So, going forward, when digitization in country like China is happening, and where the data would be, what people are saying is we may not be financially that much richer, but probably will be richer in terms of data, because digitization story in India is now being discussed all across globe. And this data would be generated in this country, and there is a big push in terms of retaining this data in the geography itself, so that you can work with data in the future.
Sure.
So would this a little bit disturb the
Oh,
story?
not at all. No, that's another misconception of the cloud.
Yeah.
Is that today one of the things that we learned very early on, and in that sense we've been innovator, and we see that today Microsoft Azure following that. But about 10 years ago, we realized that our customers wanted the data residency for good or bad reasons. Mm-hmm. It's irrelevant. There is a business need to have your data in one location and knowing what the data is. So what we did, we essentially architected our solution so we could deliver our entire infrastructure as a private cloud in any country, making sure that the data stay there. And then we could also deliver that to companies. We have today about 80 platforms, you know, Microsoft, Apple computers, etc. They have their own private Qualys cloud. And then now we can put our entire platform in Google or in Amazon, etc. So that issue of data residency, again, the people confuse Amazon or Google as being the cloud. No, the cloud is an architecture. So that data residency, in fact, serves us very well today, because we can essentially make sure that you could essentially keep the data. And now we have today one of the US, if you prefer, agencies. We have even now done, and this is the first version, a totally disconnected private cloud. Mm-hmm. So then we don't even touch the data.
Yeah, yeah.
So now it's these people. So that's, again, it's an architecture. You have to look at the cloud as an architecture.
Yeah, because why I put this question, because we are also looking at our own policy with respect to data economy, and our law, which has been put by government in terms of data privacy, talks about localization as a piece, and probably each country is trying to really making sure that sovereignty control of data is maintained. And in that case, how would that architecture really change? And I recently gone to larger players as well, and they have been very well prepared for this residency control, and probably sovereignty control is the new word they use. The technology architecture has a sovereignty control which is being given to the end client. But then another interesting discussion which is happening at this point of time is the scalability issue with the current security paradigm. And for example, Netflix has to deliver these kind of videos to millions of the customers. And for example, there are some telecom players in India which are around 300, 400 million customers, and they have to deliver so many things as a telecom core as well as the OTT player that they have. They deliver media, they deliver the songs and so many things. So increasingly, Google and Amazon and even some Indian player have been trying to build their own technology stories. For example, if we talk about EDR is a significant story and people have been significantly investing that, and suddenly one cloud provider has brought something which is an open source ecosystem for EDR. You do not have to invest for that. And many of the players are looking at how to solve this larger scalability problem with open source technologies. So do you see that will little bit create a problem for the existing security providers where the dollar value for one license will significantly go down, and increasingly this will challenge the future of the security technology?
Oh, absolutely, but I don't think it's not even an open source phenomena. You know, we are using a lot of open source, in fact, and what we do with open source, we make it scale, we made it communicated, you know, between all these different engines, open source engines that we have, so they could communicate in real time. But so open source is not really what is driving the cost. I think Sumedh made the point, what is driving the cost today down in security is the fact that the infrastructure and everything is going down. And you look at the phone, look at all these apps that you have. So of course, the paradigm has totally changed. So you have to have an architecture that essentially allows you to scale. And if you look at Qualys, and we have been always very, very sensitive at not pricing our solutions, you know, use, the value, premium value. No, we architect and we build so we could have maximum distribution. When you look at the cloud architecture, again, the cloud becomes the distribution channels. You can instantly deliver your code across the planet. Mm-hmm. And everything is self-updating. So look at all the costs that you eliminate. So fundamentally, we see that open source is, of course, a very good element. The reason, by the way, why open source is still alive is because the cloud vendors, like the Google and so forth, have all interest, and ourselves, to stimulate innovations. You look today, why is that innovation so fantastic? It's because you have a lot of people here, they've got a good idea, and with a team of 20, 30 people, you can do a lot. And when you start to have bigger teams, then you start to slow down.
I mean, that's why, because Sumedh talked about these Kubernetes engines and those content security element which is happening. And largely it is now open source story, right? So, and all these players like Google and even for that matter Amazon, and I looked at even Netflix as well, they have been even increasingly having their own innovation for security, and they are not relying on basically any commercial solutions.
Yes, absolutely.
So if that is happening,
unless they are properly architected, because they cannot do everything themselves, and I will share in a bit of competence here. So today, Microsoft, Oracle, Google, Amazon, Apple Computer, they are all Qualys customers already. Okay. And they are Qualys customers because they are using us to secure their own infrastructure, because we have an architecture that scales. I will tell you a little story. Google was, again, this is, let's say, between us, Google was one of the, I'm sorry? So that company was an early adopter of Qualys because at the time, the CISO say, you know, it's not my job of creating all that security, and I also want to have an independent view. I don't want to really build the security myself, which of course Google could do. And then the guy retired because Google, that company made a lot of money, and he got good life, and then made a lot of good money, and a great guy. He was absolutely fantastic guy. And then after that, somebody came in and said, well, we can build that. And guess what? Yeah. They could not get to the scale, and they came back to us. And that's scalability. But again, you have to have the right architecture. And what we've done, for example, today with Microsoft, it's absolutely, it's too bad that Sumit could not give the demo. Because what we have done with Microsoft, and I had interestingly enough this discussion with Bill Gates many years ago, for about 3 or 4 hours, when at the time Microsoft was starting to select us, and I was telling Bill, I said, Bill, you know, today you've got to put all your eggs into that cloud basket. And Bill was telling me, yeah, but Philippe, look at that, the integration with the cloud, all that, it's going to take, yes, the cloud will come, but all that integration, all of that is going to take a lot of time. And I gave him a say, Bill, today, your company, Microsoft, their security team has selected Qualys, a scanner which is in the cloud, to integrate with a homegrown security solution. So you're telling me about integration, your company is doing it. And then he left, and then of course you know the rest of the story when Nadella came. And so that notion of scale and architecture is really the big differentiator.
Because that's why I brought this one, because I have been meeting some of the unicorns, new unicorns of India, which are like almost 18 to 20 of them now, telecom side plus e-commerce side. And the story of security there is really very different than a conventional transaction processing business like we see. And they talk about this language, about solving some of these problems in terms of scalability, the value, and the complexity. So that's why the discussion of security would definitely move because of the immense digitization happening, and some of that digitization is helping some organization to reach to that scale where they are challenging the current paradigm of security technologies and security architecture. So now, if I really look at the presentation that Sumit had given, and probably the story that he talked about is, and you also have been talking about, is the scale and probably the innovation and the speed of innovation basically, and at the same time the continuous updation and that code that you build and deliver that. So the volume and velocity of a product that you are building. So how that is that were some years back, and now in last 3-4 years. So can you just throw some light on the product that Qualys is building and the integration it is trying to do, card innovation trying to build? So the volume and velocity story of that one. So how much effort, how much engineers, how that has been spread, what kind of operation basically you have been building?
Oh, so this is the biggest challenge of all, is to find, in fact, the people who really have the knowledge, and more than the knowledge, that desire to really understand that in today's, the technology is moving so fast. Look at what is happening in genetics today. It's absolutely incredible. So technology is moving so fast. So you need to have this kind of individuals which have, of course, fundamental, basic technical understanding, but then that curiosity and that desire. And that's the fundamental reason why we essentially make the decision, Sumit and I, about 2007, that we realized that we needed to re-architect, to adopt this newer technology. Elasticsearch was coming, all these things was coming. We could not find, again, in the Silicon Valley, for the reason that I think I mentioned, to have the talent. So we really look around the world, where could we go to have enough critical mass? So there was either China or there was India.
Yeah.
And very candidly, we tried both. So we had an operation in Beijing, an operation in Pune, and then we really realized that China was not the place. As a security company, you don't, that's not the right place. Yeah. So we put all our eggs into the Pune basket. And Jack Welch says something. I met with Jack Welch quite a few times, and I think a lot. So Jack Welch said very famously, "We went to India for the cost, and we discovered the talent." So we went to India for the talent, and we discovered the cost.
Okay.
So, and of course, that's the big advantage that today China, India has. That not only you have a huge pool of talent, but today you have a cost advantage, which of course over time, everything will be equalized. But today you have a fundamental, and a team and a population. That's what we decided to. In fact, today we have 700 people in Pune. And yesterday, Sumit and I were visiting the new campus that we're building south Pune, where we have now room for 2,500 people.
Okay.
So. And of course, because of the talent. And the other advantage I think that India has today in the new world is that today you can jump into mobility much faster than other countries. Now China has been doing that well as well, with a different regime, which is much more, you look at, for example, at WePay. I mean, that's an interesting thing that I may want to share here. If you look today at what WePay has done, they've integrated everything. In the US, you have to go to Uber, very good job, and then you want to have location, go to Google Maps, and on and on and on. So you have to go to all these multiple applications. In China, everything's integrated. Why? Because in the US, Google competes with Uber and everybody, so they all want to keep the data of their users and they don't want to have that user, so they want, so the consolidation, which could be done easily from a technical standpoint, like the way Tencent or WeChat did, which is creating an open backend and then everybody plug in, which is our, which is exactly our vision of data lake that we have. Let's plug in everybody, because then in the US it will happen, but through acquisitions. In other words, we could see, for example, Google may be buying Uber, and then of course everything will be integrated, and on and on. So that's the very different. And I think India is very well positioned to be that kind of in the middle, that because you guys have the talent, because you have the market, because of course you have the people, you could leapfrog. And that's what we see also. India is a very strategic market, because what we're doing today, if I want to go, and I'm going to be very candid here, if we're always looking for design partners. Today, when we go to the US, we have to fight the silos. You have the silos for this, the desktop team, the this team, etc. Because India has that opportunity to leapfrog all of that old, if you prefer, way, we find the customers in India significantly more receptive. So they have the use case, which is the use case of the future, and they have the drive, and of course there is the talent here. So that's what India has become so strategic for us because of these reasons.
So that's what initially when I talked about the private sector led story in US and the intervention driven story in China, which is bringing all that data together for people to use. A little bit India is trying to also do with the UPI kind of story, which is trying to bring all the financial transaction processing, consolidation of financial transaction processing, and probably it is trying to do in health industry with some health mission and health stack that government is talking about, and probably in future it will be trying to do something with the drone stack as well. So architecturally countries are moving basically, and the scale that we have and the unicorn that basically we have now, they have some funds available to work with those kind of architectural ideas as well. While all this is happening, although there are definitely some security innovators in India, and you yourself has come across a couple of them, and you also acquired them as well. So we recently published a report which has almost 175 security products company, and we have observed in last year they have been doing phenomenally good, and actually. So tell us a little bit about the acquisitions you made in India, and the kind of talent that you found and the product architecture that you found, and what led you to really make that. And most of the time what happens, we know the stories of larger organization acquire some company, but really most of the time they didn't work.
Of course.
A lot of stories around that one. So what you are doing to make those two acquisitions work as well?
So there's a few things here is that if you look today, what the Israelis has been doing very well. They have the technical talent, which came essentially via the military, etc., and security, and they have learned how to essentially create and more sales and marketing entity in the US, leverage the US investment, and then attack the US market. That's what Checkpoint did, that's what many other companies did. The Indian companies have not been able to do that. So, and because the market was not big enough, they could not find enough of a market locally. But then to go,
cost of marketing in US is big challenge.
Huge, absolutely. And they didn't know how to tap on that, if you prefer, venture money or the capitalism system in America. So, in a way, for us, this is great, because we can come to India and say, hey, that technology that you have done is fantastic. The only requirement we have is that we need to make sure that you integrate your technology into the platform, so you could have all the benefits of the synergies and our customers, and then you don't have to go and fundamentally go and try to go and expand beyond India, and which is very hard to do. And so that's where I think there's a unique time where, for us, that's what we're focusing our position in India. In fact, we've also created a small venture fund of about $25 million to even start to become seeding money, because sometimes people have an idea, but it's maybe too small, it's not the right time for us. So we want to be a really good home. And what you said about how do you keep that talent, the big advantage also of India, in the US, too much money has essentially corrupted a little bit of that industry. You have no more loyalty. You buy company at a price which are absolutely incredible. And then you cannot even keep the people. So here you have naturally more loyalty. But I think more importantly, that what you have here is that I believe also that India is going to become a significant market. It's going to take some time, but I think it's going to be a very strategic market as well. So, and for us, we have essentially, you know, the Indian DNA at the end of the day. And so we want to be a good home for these people. And in my life, I've learned a lesson when I was, again, young and beautiful many years ago. I was the CEO of CCMA. We defeated Microsoft. In fact, Microsoft wanted to buy us. And I said, what? And they were offering, at the time they were buying, they had a formula. How many engineers do you have? Oh, $1 million per engineers. And then they were taking the engineers, moving them into Redmond, and then putting their product into the distribution channels, which was a very good model. So they were offering me, we have 12 engineers, so $12 million. I said, you know, today I can get VC money and a bigger valuation. And so then Microsoft was not very happy, and they said, okay, we're going to do everything, we're going to crush you. We defeated them. And then I made the mistake to sell the company to Lotus. And I realized that suddenly Lotus, while they were telling me from an acquisition standpoint, oh, you know, we're going to use you, you're beautiful, blah, blah, all BS. Fundamentally, what they wanted to shove Lotus Notes onto the top of the system end users. And Lotus Note was a fantastic idea and product, but it was also not scalable as much. So they were, in our view, very complementary. But no, what they wanted to do is shove it. So that's when I learned that doing acquisition is hard. And so you have to have the interest of the individuals that you acquire first. If you're not a good home for them, or for what they want to do, don't try to buy them. It doesn't make any sense. But conversely, if you feel you're a good home, then it makes sense, and then everybody wins. So that's our fundamental acquisition, and we've done that very successfully with Nevis, with One Mobility. We're going to announce another very small acquisition. These guys have done a fantastic job in India. And Sumedh made reference today of the fact that they're all about Lambda, so they have no infrastructure at all. And they're a very small team of people, but boy, I mean, these guys are kicking. And they find in us, again, a good home. And that's our fundamental philosophy.
So now these people, 700 people, and now you are planning to increase that to 2,000 plus. So I like to hear, because we are also at a national level, we're trying to build a story of 2-3 stories. One is the security market, India's own startup story, but make security in India is one of the important stories that we work. So making security in India, I think you are an epistolic example of that. So in terms of skill, do you think that some high-level architectural thing can also happen in the country, or still development, maintenance kind of work?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. All the innovation today at Qualys is essentially coming from India. I will tell you, Sumedh can swear to you and or demonstrate to you. But there is another element that we see in India which is also very strategic, which is the Indian outsourcers. And I put in the Indian outsourcers, believe it or not, Accenture. Because fundamentally, when you look IBM, which we are developing a very good relationship with them, has more people in India than they have in the US. So today, these Indian outsourcers have a unique opportunity, as we see it, to transform their original business model, which was, I'm going to provide IT resources to the world, now saying, on the security side, or on the digital transformation side, I'm going to help the world accelerating and moving into the digital transformation and security. And today we're very fortunate, again, that's what India is also very strategic for us. Essentially, all the Indian outsourcers are all Qualys customers and Qualys partners. And so we see with them again that opportunity to now move into the next generation of essentially managed security service today, which it is where the market wants to go. Why? Because you cannot continue hiring the people and doing all of this because it's absolutely impossible. But the problem of managed security services is that today they don't have the technology to really intervene, to respond. So monitoring is not good enough. The analogy I give is, okay, you're monitoring my home, to take the home analogy. Hey, you've got a burglar in the kitchen. Okay, good luck. Oh, by the way, the basement is on fire. You need to go to that response. And the only way to go to that response is to be capable of remotely managing everything. And that's what I took that home analogy. That's the way security wants to go. And I think all of the Indian outsourcers here, for those who are more visionary, the one which is going to go faster will have the really opportunity to if you prefer, reinvent that managed security service. But again, you need to have the right architecture, you need to leverage it. You cannot continue building all of that as they do today. So that's the other reason why we see India as a very strategic.
And incidentally, Pune is home to many such companies.
Absolutely.
It's not only Qualys, but there are...
Yeah, we're very lucky. Yeah. We're very lucky that Sumedh came from one...
Yeah, for you, Sumedh may be reason, but many other organizations looking at like Pune probably is home to so many different...
No, Sumedh because his father and his mother, he knew it, but I think it would be... Sumedh, tell me honestly, I don't think he realized, no, certainly not me, I can tell you, how Pune will be the ideal location. I mean, you could not believe that. So, I don't know if you, did you really foresee that or not? Okay, so
we knew that there's lots of good, there's a lot of good universities and stuff. So it was just the thought process that yes, we could start here, but we didn't think that this would end up being the source of all of our innovation. Because today here everybody has access to the same technology, even better, so the challenges that they face. So the challenge that the banks here face is no less than the challenge that any other bank anywhere else faces. So of course the solutions that they see, and so that's why today the talent we see is not just the number of developers, it's architecturally and design. So when we acquire these companies have innovated already here, and we take that and we actually in fact do the opposite. We take the technology here and make it for a global audience.
So that's the very interesting and encouraging story for us that so these acquisitions are sometimes some people and somebody from some other quarter of society would like to see that our IPs are getting our IP fly is happening out of India, but at the same time that recognition itself is now because of the thing that you did in those 3-4 organizations here in India. There are many more who would be now like to do something in this area because there is a possibility that they are seeing with these kind of acquisitions is happening. So these are triggering basically.
And we can see today that there is companies like, for example, CrowdStrike. We can see now that some of the security industry have realized what we have done, and of course they follow. The image that I have for that is very simple. If you put water in the desert, guess what happens? The plants are coming, and then the animals. So that's the Silicon Valley. So that's the Silicon Valley had the right recipe.
Honestly, and thanks to the things that you have been doing, and I think that is really creating the animal spirit required to security innovation in this country. And our report says that the last 2-3 years, because of these stories, basically the animal spirit in security innovation ecosystem in the country is definitely come to a level where now it is getting a lot of attraction all across. And apart from this make security in India, there is something we are also trying to do is developing market in the country. So that remains a little challenge for us because, and I'd like to hear your views as well in terms of investment in security. we hear a lot of this thinking, although there are some organizations are willing to pay those kind of dollars or those kind of rupees to buy those solutions, but most of the time we hear that there is no real budget, desired budget allocated for the security solution, and then that sometimes they will buy the license, but then professional services side is not really significantly invested. So how do you see Indian market? What is your comment on Indian market? It's something that you want to recommend us, these are something that you should be doing to develop Indian market. So for example, apart from BFSI and ITs, we are going to oil energy companies, for example. We are going to public sector organization, critical sector organization, and creating a lot of those awareness, a lot of those targeted programs with them. So do you see this market, you mentioned this is growing, but do you see the maturity that is coming in Indian security market?
No, I think definitely India. When you look, in fact, the way I will give you another image. when I walked through, we took the car from Pune to Mumbai, and so you could see all the buildings already there, and you could see that all of that will have to be renovated. And at the end of the day, it's a huge market, internal market that you have. And of course there is some limitation, like everything else, but and so we see today India as a marketplace where I could even say, you could say, not only incredible India, but you could say incredible security in India. Because I think you have that, need, if you prefer, and that's what the government is also doing, to try to essentially leapfrog. And I would not be surprised if for some reason India becomes one of the countries where you got 5G implemented faster than in America. And because it enables so much things. I had a personal experience, I will tell you. I wanted to get my, I'm a French citizen, I'm an American citizen, I'm not American. So I go through the e-visa. I cannot believe the experience that I got. So I was trying to upload my passport and all of that, and then for some reason they were not getting. So I received an email message. It said, oh, by the way, we cannot upload your photo, etc., etc. So I was continuing trying. After that, 10 minutes, I got a phone call. Oh, so you still have issues with uploading the platform, what can I do to help you? Hello? So try to do that in America or in any other country. It's absolutely impossible.
So this is where I want to really catch you on. Like, this service means, I had been going to Israel a lot, and except a couple of examples like Checkpoint, there are a lot of innovations coming in, but they really struggle to make they measure big phenomena, like big organizations. So usually they are meant to the exit and get out of that one. Whereas India can really bring, and India can really make that possible, because the ability of serving nation would really help us to provide those professional services in the
absolutely. But the issue with Israel is very simple, because they don't have enough of an internal market, and it's very limited. So they did the best they could do, essentially leveraging their technology and then essentially leveraging the American, the American financing system, and they did a very good job at that. But that lends to itself that you cannot go very long on that one, except Checkpoint came at the right time of the firewall, and the market was big enough so you could suddenly create. But again, security, as you know, is very fragmented. So you don't have, and that has been our challenge at Qualys. Vulnerability management was not enough to build a big company, so we had to go, and that's necessity is the mother's invention. So we realized that we had to go and expand. And so, oh, Christ, we need to re-architect. Oh, it's complex, it takes time. So because our market was not big enough. So that's the problem. And again, India, you don't have that problem because you have a bigger market, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Because you have the demography, because you have all, you have a lot of advantages.
In terms of difference between Israel and India, I definitely want to specify that, because Israel, because of their geopolitical situation,
on the top,
serving is probably difficult for them, and in our case, we have been so.
And you look at all the, because you have a lot of, if you look today, you have most of the CEOs of now of tech companies are all Indians.
Yeah.
When you look in APAC,
Yeah.
maybe the decision make the technical people are all Indians.
Yeah.
So you have all that diaspora
Yeah. Yeah.
that you can absolutely leverage.
Yeah.
And that's the business India has been in, is outsourcing a lot of things. So it has become the outsourcing center of the world. And if you add now these new technology components, and if India can leapfrog and move into that everything remotely managed, everything, etc., and have the architecture, then you have a huge opportunity to wire the planet. And the Americans are losing the game in that sense. And that's what they are so anxious about China. Because China has an internal market which is already big, and they have the venture capital of China is the Chinese government. So, they can print a lot of money. And so, and you have that. So they have been able to really get scale, and they protect their market. So the Googles cannot come in and on. So that's their game. And so America has waken up to that and say, wait a minute, today we have an absolutely company. And that's what I think India is in, that kind of a more interesting neutral position here. So you're not in that fight.
And fortunately now those money is also now increasingly available in this geography, so that a lot of VC ecosystem is building.
Absolutely.
So that is also an increase. In the last 3 or 4 years, there is significant investment is happening in security startups as well. So even government has made 6-7 investment recently, almost. So that investment ecosystem for security is also significantly evolving. May not be to the tune of what we see in US and even Israel. And probably that was encouraging to hear, like you are also setting up some fund to take care of some of the investment requirement of innovation. So we have some time to ask some questions that you may have in your mind with the context of the discussion that we have. Anybody has any question, observation, or anything to ask?
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy, yeah. He can answer every question, even if it is live.
Yeah.
I've been seeing Qualys more focused on the infrastructure security. You just have the web app scanner as on the application side. Is there any strategy around getting onto that side, looking at the DevOps kind of a structure coming in?
Oh yes, absolutely. No, absolutely. We're already today, even with the web application scanning, where you can really integrate our scanners into your DevOps and the Swagger files and all of that. So we're really moving. Sumedh can give you more color on that. But DevOps already, it's all about building security in. And where you're going to build security in is in DevOps. And you have to move them beyond the infrastructure, obviously. But still, the infrastructure is interesting because today, when you look today at the IoT devices, so we're in a unique position to play a significant role there. Why? Because we have mastered 3 technologies. In fact, 2 technologies we have already mastered. The third one we're mastering it. One is we can scan every IP of the planet. Absolutely. And every website on the planet. The second, with our agent, we have 16 million agents. We can now, wherever we can put our agent, have the real-time view of every changes what happened in that device. Changes could be IT related, how much memory you're consuming, whatever. What are the applications you have downloaded, etc., etc. And now with the passive scanning, we're now looking at what's coming in at the device and all the traffic, and we bring all of that together in one platform where we've found a lot of computing power, so we can analyze and so forth. So now when you look at the IoT, you look at, for example, I would take all the medical devices of one big manufacturer. They're all computerized. They're all connected to the internet. They are even in the operating rooms. And so don't you think you want to, first of all, not only build security into these devices, but also make sure that you could also look at the maintenance of these devices and really creating a system where everything becomes remotely managed and aware. So we are building today a small agent, an SDK. So we can now give that to these IoT vendors and say, build the agent, because we're not going to build the agent for all the Siemens machine or the G machine or whatever, but you can build it. And then I can give you the backend. And that backend, by the way, you want the backend on Google? No problem. You want the backend on your own data centers? Yeah, you want that? We don't care. So that's where we move, if you prefer. And we really want to go more and more into the DevOps cycles. Sumedh spoke about software decomposition, all these things, being at the forefront. That's building in. And when you think about building in, you saw that blueprint that we draw. We understand that we're not going to do it all. So our data lake is a place where you could, like Alexa and all this, you could really bring all these other things. So you could have essentially that continuous view across on-premise, endpoint, cloud, web applications, etc., APIs. So that's what we've been building. And again, without the decision Sumedh and I made in 2007, you're going to Pune, we will not be here to tell you that story. It's that simple.
So in fact, this is a kind of a value chain, right, of security solutions, where increasingly those components are becoming more important and critical and relevant to the market, and that's why your larger leverage.
Yeah. And one point I would like to make on that building in, what we've done with Microsoft is absolutely remarkable.
Yeah.
If you today are an Azure customer and you go to the Azure Security Center, and Microsoft has done a very good job that, by the way, Google and everybody now is, and Amazon is copying, which is essentially creating that framework where you can build security in. So we have built on Azure. So if you're an Azure customer, you go to the Azure Security Centers, you want to have the view of all of your resources, you click here, poof, you got everything now on the Azure console, courtesy of a Qualys agent, which is suddenly automatically provisioned. And then you want to see the vulnerabilities and the configuration exposure you have, you click on another link, poof, everything is there. Now you want to remediate, and that's the Qualys agent doing that. Then you want to remediate, you click here, you have your playbook, automatically you remediate. Qualys is not there. And what is interesting is that all that information, we also bring, you have that all in the Azure console, but we bring that into the Qualys console. So if you have a multi-cloud environment, now you can bring and have coherent security policies across all of your cloud, starting from the discovery of your resources to et cetera, et cetera. And again, it's all about the architecture. So that's what today the world wants to go. And now some people will ask the question, but why would not Azure and Microsoft and the Google build security and provide the security stack? The reason why I believe they will not do that is because of liability. You don't want, there's a fine line that you have to have. So they are creating a framework, but how far do they want to go? Because if you start now to provide all the security yourself, then you become liable. And what the industry, the software industry, has been very successful so far is to fight product liability. However, today, because now everything is as a service, you start to see the regulators and the lawyers in America start to see to attach product liability. And you look at GDPR. Do you want to have suddenly me, being Amazon or Microsoft, having to be responsible now for GDPR and having to prove the regulator that I've done everything I should do to protect the data of my customers?
Yeah.
Both this, so yeah. You understand that security has a lot of very interesting particularities. And that's what the car analogy that Sumedh made as a limit to how much these vendors, how much they're going to build. And so we are, in fact, sitting on both sides of the fence because we help these platforms to secure their own infrastructure, and then we come the other way and help their customers secure the infrastructure as a totally independent third party because it's all automated.
So I think we can go on with some of the
discussion, but for hours.
Yeah. But hope it has really helped us to understand technology like Qualys, how they look at building their product strategies as well as building their business operation. And primarily, some of those stories are also something that we can leverage on. We are leveraging those stories to create our country story. So we know that Israel takes a lot of pride and they promote a lot of their ability. But these stories are real stories, and build on that and create a story. It can be a very big story that we can build on. And I think you are one of the important contributor to the story that we are creating for the cybersecurity in this country. And thanks for those contributions.
Well, thank you very much. We're very happy to be here.
And with this, I will like to conclude for the next thing. But thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Please give.